Hello, my friends. Miss Crystal here for day one of Poppies. I'm so glad that you could join me. So let's talk first about what you're going to need for this class. You will need a copy of a picture of the poppies. Now, I like to have two copies. I like to have a black and white one because I feel like, I don't know if it actually saves on ink, but I feel like it saves a little bit on ink versus using all my color. So you will need a copy of this. Now you can freehand draw it, but I'm going to show you how you can draw this in a simpler way because I have a lot of students, especially adults, that aren't very confident in drawing. And so I'm going to show you the easy way around. You will also need watercolor paint. So I like to use the Crayola Education watercolors. If it doesn't say education, they're not very good. Sorry, Crayola, but there is definitely a standard, and these are more student grade. We have a variety of colors, and what I need to do right now is I need to moisturize these because I like to do this and get it going so it can suck in the juices. Now, what a lot of people do will either be put too little water or too much. So I like to use a spray bottle. I just reuse hair product because see how nice of a, I don't know if you could see that, but it was a really fine mist. So I'm just going to spray it on hair. I'm actually going to swap them out because sometimes, I mean, they are great, but they don't work as well. Oh, see, now that's a good one. There we go. So I'm going to spray this, and I'm actually just going to close the lid. I'm giving it about 2 spritz for each color. I'm going to shut the lid to help keep it moist because I want my paint to be nice and liquidy but not flooded. So as you can see, it's just kind of shiny. If I needed to, if I didn't have a spray bottle, guess what? You could use a paintbrush. So I'm just going to get this paintbrush wet. Even though I've wet them, I'm not going to over wet it. Get it wet and then just wipe it on the edge and see how that water just goes in there. And just a little wipe will be enough to moisturize the color. Okay, so I know that I am going to be using yellow. I'm going to extra moisturize that right there. And that's the only color we're actually using for day one. So I'm going to remember to shut my lid. The other thing you need is paintbrushes. So you can use a flat brush for this. I will not end up using the flat brush, but the flat brush is really great for your bigger areas. You will want a nice round brush. This is probably around a 9 or a 10 in size. And this is a nice small flat or round brush. I love round brushes. A lot of people like to use the flat brushes, but the flat brushes really, their purpose is mostly for flat areas, big areas. And I don't find that they mix as well because if you do gentle circles, it kind of helps blend. And it's a little harder to do that with a flat brush. The other thing you will need is a kneaded eraser. Now, if you're drawing this on your own, you won't need a kneaded eraser. But if you don't know what a kneaded eraser is, it's a tiny little guy right here. You can see how big it is. This is in a package. They do come bigger, but they used to be like 30 cents. Now they're probably like $1.50 or something, but they're not too expensive. People use these for drawing, and we're going to use it to help kind of clean up our picture after we're done transferring it. This is what the kneaded eraser, it kind of looks like chewed up gray gum, but if it gets dirty, you're just going to stretch it out. This is really usually used for charcoal. It's used for chalk pastels, all those chalky things, and it gets it mucked up. And so look at how fresh. It seems a little lighter gray when you mix it. The nice thing about this is you can also make it nice and small and pointed and do little areas, or it's kind of like playing with clay. All my students love these because they like to play with them. I can roll it into a ball and then I can roll it like this. And a lot of people like to kind of erase their lines. I don't worry about erasing my lines, but I also don't draw them that dark. But you can roll this over your picture if you want to lighten your lines. Let's talk paper. So there are some watercolor papers out there that say, oh, it's excellent, it's great quality. It's not. So when you're looking for paper, I love this brand. This is from Walmart. I like it because I teach a lot of people and I get 50 sheets, but you don't have to use this. What you do want to look for, most papers will say acid free. But you want to see how it says 140 pound. That is the weight of the paper. That means it's really thick. So if I'm looking at this paper, it's really thick. You see how thick that is? It's thicker than a cardstock. So a lot of cardstocks are around 90 pounds. This is much heavier. The reason you want a heavy paper for watercolor, and do you see the texture? Some people, different artists will prefer different things, and some of them will be really texture on one side and less on the other. So why have a heavy paper? Because it can handle the water of watercolor, especially if you're using a lot of washes, which means using a lot of water on it. If you're using paper more, like some watercolor papers are actually more like a printer paper, and those, they lie to you. They're going to fall apart. You're going to get holes in it. You want something thick like this. Now, some are really textured, some are not. And part of that is because some people prefer really textured because it holds the water and it allows it to puddle. While others do not like that. They want it super smooth because they might want to add drawing onto their picture. It really comes down to a personal preference. As I said, I love this. There are some great Amazon versions. But the biggest thing is look for 140 pounds. Now, some papers are 140 pounds, and when you get them, you're like painting and it feels like it's kind of lifting more. The reason for that is that it's probably more of a paper-based paper, where if you have more of a cotton base, it holds together better. Now, I don't know the ratio on this because it doesn't say, but I find that this works really well for me. I like the texture of it. It's got an overall kind of bumpy texture, but it's not too uniform because some of them are like a dot and a line and a dot and a line, and I feel like that's kind of distracting for me. I use it for some of my students. It works great for student work, but for my own work, I prefer something like this. So there's that paper. As far as paper goes, you want a piece of paper, and I like to use a half sheet. You could use a whole sheet, but you want basically a scratch piece of paper so you can practice your color mixing. So we'll want to have that as well. Another thing we will want is some graphite. So these are graphite sticks. I get them in a box of 12. A lot of them will come in a box of 6. I prefer the box of 12 mostly because I teach a lot and I need more for my students. I tend to break them in half because the big one is I feel like it's harder to operate with, but it also, if I only have one box and I have like 20 students, breaking it in half makes it go a lot further. So this is just my preference. As I said, you only need this if you're not drawing your picture on your own, if you're looking to transfer it. And then the last thing we need is some painter's tape. I'm not sure where my painter's tape was, but painter's tape, I usually use the blue. You can use masking tape. I do prefer painter's tape for myself personally, mostly because I feel like it comes off easier. Now, if you've ever painted and your tape kind of rips, then I will show you a technique how you can loosen it a little bit easier, less likely to rip. But if it does start to rip when you're pulling it off, then hit it with a hairdryer, loosen the glue, and it'll work just great. Okay, so another thing you need to tape down. Like, why do you need tape? I don't understand. You are going to tape down your paper onto a board. This is just a board that I got on Amazon. It came in a package of 8. You don't have to get a package of 8. You can also get larger clipboards. You could use a plastic board of some sort. You just want something that's stable. It's going to hold its shape. This one I like because it wasn't very expensive. I tape off the edges, and why we do that is it holds our paper down. Okay, so when we're holding our paper down, it doesn't allow the paper to bow as we are painting. And that can come in really handy, especially in our last day where we're doing our background. For the background, we will be using more water. If you want to use a bigger brush, that's a good day to do that. Okay, so those are what we need. Why don't we go ahead and get started? I'll show you the process. Okay, my friends, I found my painter's tape. So this is not obviously the poppies that we painted, but this is one that I have taped down the edges. I'm just trying to tape a little bit around the edge. Now, of course, I'm using 9 by 12 inch paper. You can always use bigger. If you're doing the transfer, 9 by 12 is really nice because a printer paper size is very similar once I've taped my stuff down. So the first thing I'm going to do, grab my piece of paper, and you might notice if there's big texture or not. My texture is a little bit bigger on this side, but it's really not that much different. So I'm going to center it. You want to make sure it's not wonky. So sideways, you want to make sure it's pretty well centered. Some people like to measure it. I'm not that much of a perfectionist. I'm an artist. We like, oh, that's close enough. So I'm going to take, and you can tape off a lot more if you want to. You can do like half. I like to do a little bit less. So I like to, before I rip it, I'm just going to take and measure it. I kind of set it down. And then I don't know if you can see, but you can kind of see where the tape line is. Now I can lift it. That's a nice thing with painter's tape. I can readjust it. And then I just tend to rip mine. Of course, you can use scissors if you prefer. Another kind of tape that works pretty well is washi. I find that it's a little less grippy than the painter's tape. So I really like to use the painter's tape. Now this is close to, it's not actually quite a 1 inch, but it's the closest thing you'll probably get. And I just double tape it because I don't want paint on my board. Now you may think, does it really matter? These boards are masonite boards, so water does affect them. I've tried to preserve them by spraying like lacquer and stuff, but they're super absorbent. So as long as you tape the edge where you're not getting a lot of water on it, it's just fine. And the water, you'll get moisture on the bottom side from your paper, but it's not enough to really worry about it ruining the board. So I've been painting on boards like this for maybe a couple of years. I also have bigger boards that I use for my more professional work. Obviously the paper is bigger as well. And of course, if I want to paint bigger. So I'm just going around and doing a double layer. I'm not as concerned if this outside edge is covered, mostly the top, because that's where my water is going to hit. Woo, throwing my tape. I was very excited to be a part of this project today. Okay, I just rub it down, rip it, and I could just do 2 of them before I fold it. It doesn't really matter. It's all about the process, my friends. And then I just tape over the edge. As I said, you don't have to use a masonite board. They come pretty cheap, so that is nice. You can buy like drawing boards. There are art clipboards that you can get. Like I have this one that works really well. And obviously I can do a little bit bigger pieces of paper, but you see some smudgy stuff, I would just put tape on that. Do you have to? No, but let's be honest. As an artist and as a teacher, I like to keep my stuff nice. Some people like to, if you're wearing an apron, purposely paint on it. I try and I don't purposely paint on mine because this is what I do for a job. I want to look nice and presentable. Okay. Ta-da! Now I'm just going to rub this down so it's not lifting up. I probably did around 1/4 of an inch all the way around. If I wanted to measure a little bit closer for framing purposes, I could, but I'm not too worried about that today. Okay, I'm going to set this aside because the next part is a little bit messy. The next part is I'm going to take my beautiful picture here. And I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to get one of my graphite sticks. And you can see most of them are broken in half. They come in a pretty long size. Now this will get your fingers dirty, but don't worry because it cleans up pretty well. So if I don't have a picture here, I don't actually need to put the graphite there. This is kind of like using a transfer paper, and when I'm doing it, I try and do more on the edge here because it releases better color. If you're going like this, that is not dark enough. You want it pretty dark. I'm going to press pretty hard. And do you see all this graphite dust? It's good to have like a trash can near you. And this is the same thing as what you'd find in a pencil. So if you don't want to buy the graphite sticks, why don't you go ahead? You can do the same process with a pencil, but see how fast this is? It goes really fast with this, and that's why I like to use it. I'm not too worried about the powder. I can spread it out if I want to, but oh, look at that. That's very messy. So this is probably my students' least favorite part because it is kind of messy, but they love the fact that they don't have to free draw a picture. Now, if you're wondering, okay, but what about the copyright of this picture? I took this picture in my backyard, so I give you permission to paint from it. And most people that are learning art, they're not concerned about copyrights. Most of my classes, if I'm honest, I get the images from Google because most of the people I'm teaching, they're not out there to sell their art and get awards and get all that stuff. They're more there to learn. They want to know more about watercolor or whatever medium I'm teaching, and they're excited about it. Okay, so I have a trash can here. If you're wondering, what is she doing taking it off the table? I'm just shaking it off over the trash can. Then I want to clean my hands. Now, to save time, missed a little spot. To save time, I'm just going to use a wipe that I have here. But of course, you guys can feel free to go wash your hands at this point. Just pause the video and see how easy this comes off. If it's on your table, what helps, instead of just using water, use a little soap with it and it just comes off easy. You see how I left some right there? No big deal. It wipes off really well. Now, before I set things down, I want to make sure that this is dry. But guess what? I have my board and a little bit of water isn't going to hurt anything. So I'm just going to take my board. I can set it right on here. It's not going to hurt it. If you didn't tape down your picture, you don't have to, but I find it very helpful, especially for this next part. So I have my picture. It doesn't quite fill in my whole page. Can you see that? So I'm just going to put that right on there. And then I'm going to do what's called a register. So in printmaking, a register is where you line things up so that you get the same print where you want it. We're going to use that same term and make a register for transferring our picture. Now I want to be careful about putting my arm in there because you see how it transfers, but guess what? Oh, look at that kneaded eraser, just cleans it right up. So I'm going to grab a pencil. For this, I can use a regular pencil, sparkly, or I can use a number 2 pencil. Doesn't really matter. Oh, sorry, I mean an ejector pencil. So I'm just going to take, and by putting these two here, I can flip and see how my picture is transferred. Now, I usually don't push super duper hard, but I do want to push hard enough that I can see what's going on. So this is really nice. I don't have to worry about drawing. But if you're like, oh, but I want to practice my drawing, then go ahead and freehand draw it. Or if you don't have access to a printer, that's okay. You can freehand draw this because a poppy out of anything is pretty simple to draw. You're like, haha, yeah, right. No, it really is. Do a circle, do some wavy leaves. In the past, I used to teach, especially my adults, how to draw everything and break it down to basics, but I find that most of the classes I teach for adults are like a painting like this will take about 4 hours. So we want to be respectful of the times. I'm going to show some of these lines. You can see the lines a little bit better in the colored picture. And I always like to have a colored version because sometimes the black and white gets a little bit lost, and it just helps me out when I'm trying to figure out, okay, what is that area? Well, I have the color version. It gives me a little bit more detail. So I'm just outlining my main areas, and I want to see how's it doing. Oh, look at that. Isn't that great? But I do have some smudges. No big deal. That's probably from putting my hand on the paper. Now you can see that my drawing isn't super dark. I don't want it super dark. I'm not pushing so hard that it's just super dark. We don't want that. We want it just a nice kind of light sketch. Some people even put a third piece of tape, but I find that for the most part, this sets pretty well on here. Sometimes these petals are a little tricky. It's hard to figure out exactly what is going on. And we just want to do our best. Like I'm looking here, I'm like, what is this flower petal doing? I can see it kind of curves here. So I'm just going to draw that curve in there and then draw some lines down. We got a nice wavy line on the outside. We have another one here. Once again, what is going on in this area? It's a little tricky. It looks like it's kind of flipped in front. As I said, it can be a little tricky, and every once in a while, just flip up your picture so you can see what it looks like as you're drawing as well. So I'm seeing some good lines in here. I'm just going to add those lines. I accidentally drew through part of the black area. I'm not concerned about that because when I paint it, it'll be dark, or I can erase it, and that's okay too. And where it's kind of darker, I'm just adding some lines in there. Now, do you see how this kind of cuts off? I can kind of figure out where this is going to go. See how I can connect the two? So I'm just going to keep drawing. And if you mess up a little bit, that's okay. You don't have to show anyone the picture you got your painting from. Now I'm going to check again. How is it looking? It's looking pretty good. I'm going to add some of these lines in here. And see how that's cut off a little bit too. I could just kind of say it's like that. Now, and it did transfer. This one did not transfer because I didn't take it far enough over, but I can just come back and draw that in. It'll look a little more complete. It'll make it look nice. Now, something to notice is that these lines are all kind of like what you would call radial lines. Think of a sun. A sun is round and it has rays going out. These flower petals are like a sun with radial lines. The center being towards the base of the petal, and all the lines are kind of radiating out from that. That will play a big role as we're trying to paint our flower. Let's see, I think it's time. Now, do I have to do it in this exact order? No, I could do the center first if I want to. I just wanted to kind of lay down those petals first. Okay, this is looking quite nice. I'm liking it. Okay, I'm going to put my little dot there. And overall, this is kind of a circle, but I'm just going to kind of trace what I see. So I'm tracing the outside area here. And if it gets a little dark, remember you can refer to your color picture because it's a little easier to see. I'm not looking for perfection, honestly. I'm looking for, that looks pretty close. Because there's always details in every painting I do. There's like, oh, I totally missed that detail. I didn't notice that. Oh, that has this color in it. Don't get lost in the weeds. It's okay. We will make it through this. Now keep in mind, this is a 4-hour class typically that I teach. If it takes you longer, that's okay. If it takes you less time, that's okay. That just means you're a fast painter. We're not allergic to fast painters. We like them. But sometimes you might just need to slow down every once in a while. Okay, I'm going to do some of these little things. A lot of them are just little lines, and it's kind of little lines with a little loop on them. Now, everyone does this a little bit different. I can't see much detail in here, so I'm not too concerned about that. I'm mostly looking for these little loops in here. Now, when I'm painting this, hopefully I don't lose any of the detail, but sometimes you have to go back in and draw some of the detail in, and that's okay. Especially for this area right here, I am looking at my color picture. I'm like, oh, I have little, what is the word I'm looking for? Ovals. Little ovals for the ends. And I'm not looking for perfection here. I'm just looking, oh, it's kind of similar to that. Okay, so I want to see how this is going. That is looking pretty good. It's still a little mussed up here, but I'm not too concerned about it. Now for the background, there's a lot going on, and keep in mind, it doesn't cover the whole area. So I'm just going to include part of the background, and then I'm going to fill it in differently. So I see some leaves here, and I am holding it down because as I'm pushing on it, it's kind of moving a little bit. So you can hold it if it starts doing that to you. And these are kind of rugged edge leaves. They're beautiful, but you don't realize how rugged they are. Now this one's in front of it. I cut that off. I'm making my own leaf now. So see how I'm keeping it pretty simple? I'm just going to keep going, keeping it simple. Okay, so I like this area. I feel like I want some leaves up here, but at this point, I'm just going to add my own leaves. I'm taking this off. You, of course, can go more if you want to, but in general, the leaf is, I gave it a little bit of a curve because it's more pretty that way, but it's just kind of wider and then goes zigzag towards the top. I really get the feel for that by doing these bottom ones. I'm just going to do several here. But since I did some here, I want to do some on the other side because right now my symmetry, my balance is a little off. This one's a little heavier, especially with this being over here. It doesn't have to be perfect, obviously, but I do want to consider it as I'm going. So I'm just going to have some more leaves coming off the side here. Maybe a little guy right here. Okay. And for drawing, I feel like that's pretty good. Now I'm just going to come and clean up any of these funky areas if I need to. If I feel like I've lost some lines, I can come in and redraw them. But my goal is not to overly push on it. Watercolor paper, it's very thick. So if I push too hard, I create little crevices, and if I push too hard, those crevices will collect paint, and it's a little harder to control the look I'm looking for. Now I'm just kind of wiping this over the top. I want to get this off before I paint. The reason for that is once I start painting, anything that's wet, like this stuff that gets wet, these little crumbles here, if you're like, oh no, I forgot. First of all, it kind of makes it stain. So water on here, if I didn't get my smudges off, can be a difficulty. But also, let's say you're like, can I erase it after I put my paint? That actually doesn't work, because when you put your paint, if you want to take off pencil, you've already put a layer, and if you take an eraser, like a regular eraser, even some of these, it'll actually lift your watercolor. So we want to make sure that we get this to the standard that we want before we start painting. As I'm going, I'm kind of looking at my color page just to make sure it's how I want it. Feeling like that line got a little darker than I wanted. I want to make sure, especially these ones that kind of curve and have the line going behind it to give it depth, that those look pretty good. Because sometimes when you're painting too, your lines get a little lost. For a flower like this, I want to make sure that my lines are not super dark, because while yellows and oranges and reds are not super dark colors, we want it to be a little lighter because they are a little bit lighter in tone. And if it looks kind of smudgy, I can always erase and come and draw back in. Sometimes that's easier than doing a lot of other stuff. Now, as I said, some people, they don't want to see any pencil lines. I'm not afraid of the pencil lines. I think the pencil lines add a nice detail to it. It's a part of the structure of the painting, but some people, it's like they're allergic to it. So to each their own. If you're allergic to pencil lines, you can erase them super light, but just keep in mind that as you add layers of watercolor, it tends to lift a little bit of the pencil. So I don't want to make it too light, but I want it dark enough I can see it throughout the project. And some of these, they're kind of light, those little light lines, and that's okay. I'm not too concerned about it. Okay, so for our paint today, we are only going to use yellow. And you're like, what? Look at all the colors in there. Well, with watercolor, it's transparent. So that means it's see-through. And that is really nice for adding glazes. Glazes are just a layer of color on a layer of color on a layer of color to make more colors. So we're going to come in here. This is looking pretty good. I'm going to draw this in a little bit more. And I think for visual purposes, I'm going to take and just move this a little bit. There we go. Now, if you're like, why is one side of this leaf bumpy and not the other? It's because it's turned on its side. So one side is smooth and the other side is bumpy. Good question, people. Good question. Okay, so now I'm ready. Now, for this, I can use a beautiful rounded brush or a smaller, beautiful rounded brush. Now, a lot of people, when doing watercolor, they may want to thin down the color a little bit. I am not going to thin down any color at this point. You may say, why? Well, I want to lay down some of these bright yellows that I'm seeing. And there's going to be areas like down here, I'm not going to put any yellow. It'll make more sense as I show you. I personally am going to use this beautiful big yellow. It's not yellow. This big brush to do my yellow. I also, oh, I forgot to mention you need water. It's watercolor. It's in the name. So I'm going to take wipe here. Now you can also use a paper towel. That's all right. So I'm just using yellow today. I'm laying these undercolors. So I'm going to look here. There's a lot of brightness on the top right here. Do you see that? So I'm just laying it. I'm only doing a petal at a time. And let's see. That's pretty bright in there. I'm just going straight into my yellow. That's pretty bright there. And remember those radial lines, how they angle? We want to keep that in mind as we're going. You may notice I'm leaving some white space in between. That white space is on purpose. Why is it on purpose? Because it's actually where my darker area is, and I want to use a different color on that. So we have some lovely color in here. And if I don't get it exactly the same as the picture, it's fine. I'm not stressed about it. I'm going to come in here. Now I could have drawn a little darker line there, but that's okay. If your paintbrush seems a little bit sketchy, it's probably just too dry. My brush is pretty moist at this point. I'm just taking it down. So if I want a little bit of a lighter yellow in these areas, I've rinsed off my brush. So you see that? Rinse, 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 wipe, wipe, wipe. Take some of this color down. Now there's a darker area right next to this brighter area. So I have a really bright edge right here. There's usually a bright edge right next to a dark area. It's just how it goes. It makes our bright areas seem brighter. So I'm just taking this. Oh, this is lovely. Now this is has a lot of yellow orange. We're going to make that by adding yellow first. If you've never done glazes, this may seem kind of new to you, but it's going to be glorious, I promise. And even if you struggle a little bit with this painting, don't stress it too much, honestly. This is how we learn. We learn through trial and error. I'm just taking some lines down, and there is a lot of yellow orange in here, so I got to have a lot of yellow. So I've rinsed my brush, kind of wipe it off, and then I'm going to take and just see how nice and wet that still is. Now there's more potent yellow in some areas, is a little thinner in some areas, and that is okay. But on those really bright areas, like this is very bright, we want to keep that in mind. Also with watercolor, white, you don't usually want to use white. The reason for that is that it's transparent. So if I try and use white, mostly I want to use it for mixing colors. Like if I want to make a mint green, white makes a great mint green. But it doesn't work if I make a mistake and I want to cover it up. You can't really put white paint on there to cover it because it's too see-through. So something to keep in mind. So anywhere you use the white, you want to leave the white of the paper. Now this has some white in it. I'm going to ignore that because with watercolor, your white of your paper is what you would use. Instead, I'm going to make it, hey, yellow. Imagine that. Yellow, 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 yellow. Oh, it's starting to rain outside. We didn't get very much snow this year, so rain is a good thing. Now, as you see, this is getting a little bit darker. It does have some yellow in it, but it's not going to be as bright. So I'm just going to do some lovely little streaks in here. And you might notice, see how along this edge it's a little bit darker? I want to be aware of that. So I'm going to leave less yellow in this area here. keeping in mind I'm doing radial lines. So they are on this big petal, this is around my center area. So all my lines are kind of pointing towards that. Now I'm going to take and just a little bit of water, kind of spread it out a little bit. And if I need a little more paint, I can add more paint. That's not a big deal. Because to get those yellow oranges, I'm putting my yellow first. Ooh, look at that. Ooh, look at that. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. And I'm just going around doing the whole thing like this. I like to start with my outlines. I feel like outlining it makes it good. Also, something to think about is since my background is going to end up being darker than my yellows and oranges, if I accidentally paint over the line like it did here, it's not the end of the world because the darker colors will cover it up, and that's great. So I'm kind of aiming for where I have a bump, I want to highlight. Do I always get it that way? No, but in general, that's what I'm going for. A little bit of water. Can add a little bit more. Ooh, look at that potent yellow there. Lovely. It's going to be very bright. There's a lot of bright right in here. So definitely want some potent yellow in there. And then just Now I know there's not as much yellow orange in there, but I like my outlines, and especially if I'm going to have a darker background, I want that edge to really pop. So I'm just outlining the whole thing. There's kind of a bump right in here. Just add some yellow to show that brightness of that bump. And then I just water and spread some of this out. Does it end up having lines? Yes, but look, I have lines. It's okay. Not a big deal. Now, something to know about watercolor is that you don't paint with it as thick as you would acrylic paint. It's actually you want it to be pretty thin. And what we want is thinner layers at the beginning and then thicker as we go. So I'll do a little bit thicker in my darker areas so it really shows up better. Let's see, I have some yellows in here. I'm not trying to block your view by any means. Let's just slide everything down a little bit. There we go. I got a little bit smudged there. That's okay. Just wipe that out. Give myself a nice little outline. And then some radial lines. And I'm not looking for perfect. Like this up here has less yellow than some areas. But I'm okay with that. I'm going to leave this without a lot there because it's kind of dark there. And there's a little bit right in there. Ooh, lovely. Okay, so this is looking good, but did you notice there's yellow in the green? Yes, yellow and blue make green. Many of you already know that. So when I'm mixing this, I want to show my highlights. I got to do it. I want to. My leaf is different than the leaves in there. That's all right. I just usually think, okay, where's the light? It's above it. So at the top of my picture is where I'm going to put my highlights. Right in here, the top of my leaf is where the light is at. It's a pretty good general rule. Now this leaf is on top of that leaf, so I'm just going to do some on the edge because this is where my shadow is. Now I could switch to my smaller brush because this is a little hard to get in those little areas, but I am okay. I really don't want to switch brushes at this point in time, so I'm just going to say that's all right. It's fine. Once again, we have another leaf that will have a shadow right there, so I'm just going to put it on the outside edges. Now, if you're like, that looks a little harsh, just take a little water and soften that edge a little bit, and that'll look real nice. Ooh, I missed a little bit here. There's not actually a lot of yellow in the picture, but I'm faking it, people. I want this to be a little brighter, and so I make it that way because that's what we do as artists. We make it what we want. Okay, so I'm looking at the picture. See how on the right side it's brighter? Sun is coming from the right side. That's fine. I'm going to put some on the right side. I'm not coloring the whole thing in. I'll move it up so you can see a little better. And if there's white, I'm just like, I see a little white in the leaf, I'm ignoring the white and I'm just going to say, well, my light color is yellow. I'm going to put some there. Simple, right? I kind of erased this leaf a little bit, but I can see it well enough. It'll be okay. Okay, so that is what we are doing for day one. It's looking pretty good. We're going to add more and more layers as we go. I hope you can join me and send me pictures when you're done. Okay, I want to see what you created. All right, guys, I'm going to sign off. See you for day two. Bye.